Blessings, everybody. This is Dale. Thank you so much for joining with me today on the Word Podcast. We are in Acts 14, where we have seen that Paul and Barnabas have got run out of another town. All right. So they fled to the cities of Lystra and Derbe, the region of Lycaonia. I'm not sure how you say that, but that's how I'm going to try to say it. Lycaonia, Lycaonia, Lycaonia. I think that works. And to that entire surrounding country. And we left off in verse 7 where it says, and there they continued to preach the gospel. This is what they did. They were going out, they were proclaiming, and they were preaching the gospel. Now listen to this, verse 8 of Acts 14. Now at Lystra, or Lystra, I say it both ways. So at Lystra, there was a man sitting who could not use his feet. So pay real close attention to the details here. There's a man sitting there, and he couldn't use his feet. Then we learn some more. He was crippled from birth and had never walked. Okay, so we learned something about this man. He's sitting there because his feet were non-functioning. They had never functioned. He had been that way since birth. He had never walked. Verse 9. He listened to Paul speaking, and Paul, looking intently at him and seeing that he had faith to be made well, said in a loud voice, "Stand upright on your feet." And he sprang up and began walking. I love these kind of accounts, folks. I love them in one way, and then in other ways they sort of get me down. I'll deal with the getting me down part first, because I sit there and go, Lord, it's not even so much, Lord, why do we not see this today? It's more along the line, Lord, let this happen today. Why does this not happen? Well, we can pretty well answer the why it doesn't happen. The why it doesn't happen is found within the account right here. The faith for it to happen, either from the one to receive or the one who sees, okay? By faith. And then just a boldness. Notice that Paul said in a loud voice. He didn't just whisper a little thing in case God didn't do something. He just told the guy to stand up. But notice what happened here. The guy was listening to Paul. So he's listening to Paul speaking. And Paul, while he's speaking, is looking intently at him and seeing that he had faith to be made well. This is a little phrase. I've talked about this several times before, but this is a phrase that sort of struck me many years ago in Acts. In the New American Standard, it says this. This man was listening to Paul, and he spoke as he spoke, who, when he had fixed his gaze on him and had seen that he had faith to be made well, said with a loud voice, "Stand upright on your feet." This fixed his gaze. You see it with Peter. You see it with Paul. That they're looking and they fix their gaze. Do we give God time to fix the gaze, to look with intent, to pay attention to what's occurring? Now, not from the point of view that I'm going to stare somebody down until they have faith. Really? Give me a break. But are we looking with the eyes of the Lord? Paul looked at him and he saw something. And he kept looking at him intently. Okay? That's that fixed the gaze, steadfastly, with intention. He kept looking at him thinking, something's going on here. Something's happening here. And he fixed his gaze on him, and he saw that the man had faith to be made well. We're not told what Paul was speaking of right here. Okay? We're not told at this time. We're told at other times the things that he spoke, but we're not right here. But we know that he's speaking of Jesus. The man had faith to be made well. When Paul said that, he said with a loud voice, "Stand up on your feet." So what occurred there? Paul saw that the man had faith to be made well. He's telling him, hey, appropriate that faith. Execute that faith. Stand up on your feet. And he sprang up. It means that he leapt up and he began walking. Remember, the man had been like this from birth. He had never walked. Most of us know that sometimes just getting up out of the chair is a little bit of an endeavor. Rarely do we spring up. Even if we're younger and we spring up, we find if we spring up too quickly, you might stumble, you might fall, you might even pass out. He sprang up and began walking, never having stood on those feet and never walked on the feet. Now just think about this, what God was doing. The boldness, the man had faith to be healed. Whatever that means. Was he saying, God, show me what to do. I don't know how to do this. I believe that you can do this. Paul sees this, understands it, and says, hey, just do it. Stand up. He wouldn't even known the mechanism to stand up. So he didn't stand up. He sprang up. He leapt up, and then he began walking. With verse 11, you can imagine, when the crowd saw what Paul had done, they lifted up their voices and said in the Lycaonian language, the gods have come down to us in the likeness of men. So the crowd saw what Paul had done. What had Paul done? He just said, stand up, stand up. But since he did that, they are going to associate this phenomenal transformation. They're going to associate it with Paul. And they're declaring that the gods have come down to us. Well, what do they mean by that? Well, verse 12 tells us. Barnabas they called Zeus, and Paul Hermes, because he was the chief speaker. And you may know a little bit here about the Greek and Roman mythology, the gods. So they thought that these were the mythological gods. Don't hear mythological from the point of view, like I always thought of for many, many years, of being fictitious and not real. I think the mythological figures that we encountered in school and things like that, we encounter them a lot in movies and stuff, that they are built and predicated upon a reality that is true. Okay? So they thought Barnabas was Zeus and Paul and Hermes. Verse 13, listen to this. And the priest of Zeus, whose temple was at the entrance to the city, brought oxen and garland to the gates and wanted to offer sacrifice with the crowds. So there's actually an actual temple of the Zeus here. So that was their god. They see this thing happen, which we're going to say is a miracle. They say, oh, this must be from Zeus. Must be the power of Zeus. So now they're going to come and they're going to offer sacrifices to Paul and Barnabas. Verse 14. But when the apostles, Barnabas and Paul, heard of it, there we go, it's confirmed that Barnabas and Paul are apostles. Remember, we spoke about that earlier. When they heard this, they tore their garments and rushed out into the crowd, crying, men, why are you doing these things? We also are men of like nature with you, and we bring you good news that you should turn from these vain things, they're pointing to the temple of Zeus, to a living God, who made the heaven and the earth and the sea and all that is in them. In past generations, he allowed all the nations to walk in their own ways. Yet he did not leave you without witness, for he did good by giving you rains from heaven and fruitful seasons, satisfying your hearts with food and gladness. So they are explaining, no. We're men just like you. See, we just tore our garments off. You can see us physically. We're just like you. You need to turn from these vain things. You need to realize that God's been with you in these past generations. He gave you rain. He gave you food. He satisfied your heart with food and gladness. But no, we're not gods. Last verse, verse 18. Even with these words, they scarcely restrained the people from offering sacrifice to them. So they did it, but they barely restrained the people from sacrifice to them as being gods because of what they saw. Sad to say, too many people would receive the adulation today. They really would. Well, my time's up. We will continue talking more about this in the next episode. I'll see y'all then. Goodbye.